Ohio State and USC. Badgers jumped 6 spots to number 18 in the poll. It's the highest they've been since the poll on December 2nd when they were ranked 11th. They proceeded to lose 3 straight games, but since then they've won 7 straight to get to 15-3 on the year and 5-2 in Big Ten play. Going to finish off their 2-game Los Angeles road trip tomorrow when they face UCLA. Bruins coming off a 24-point win over Iowa on Friday. Turning to the Bucks, they're on the road tomorrow at New Orleans. They hit the midway point of the year with a win over Philly yesterday to get to 24-17 on the season. That comes despite starting year 2-8 and dealing with injuries and illness to some of their top players. That included Chris Middleton, who likes where they're at right now.
Yeah, with the up and down season that we've had so far, I think we'll take it, knowing that, we could be better in a lot of different areas. There's a lot of games I think we dropped that we thought we should have won. But to be 7 games over 500 with, all the highs and lows, I think we'll take it right now. Hopefully, we keep, getting those wins up and getting a higher win percentage.
Again, the Bucks are in New Orleans to face the Pelicans tomorrow. Tip there is at 7.
Keeping Wisconsin strong.
Rural Mutual is the #1 farm insurer in Wisconsin for a good reason. As a company founded by farmers, they understand the ag industry and its challenges. Local agents offer farm families the best advice and personalized coverage. Visit ruralmutual.com to find an agent near you.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, at least one Wisconsin player is guaranteed to win a Super Bowl ring this year. All 4 conference finalists, Philadelphia, Washington, Kansas City, and Buffalo, have a former Badger on their roster. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil. Print.
Roll, flip it, got it. Oh, the ball was dropped. He had the 2-point conversion in his hands. Andrews did not hold on. Oh, my goodness. Oh.
We're going to enjoy this one tonight, turn our attention to the Chiefs tomorrow. We know what they are. They're the perennial of what you want to be in the NFL. Someone's got to beat them to get past them. So, we're going to enjoy this one tonight.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Little breaking news this afternoon within the last about an hour and 15 minutes. The Bears, I almost said the Bens. The Bears have hired Ben Johnson as their next head coach. Sounds like his defensive coordinator might be Dennis Allen. The NFC North, I didn't win any playoff games this year, but this division, can you find a better coached division? More talented division? Ben Johnson had to be really struggling because the Patriots job came off the board. I think that was the best job in this hiring cycle, personally. You're in a division with Josh Allen, but the Dolphins are beatable. The Jets are a mess. You step into a situation, I think the Crafts are good owners, even if the recent track record hasn't shown it. I still think they're good owners. They're not a mess. You get Drake May, who showed a lot of promise as a rookie, a ton of money, good draft capital. I thought the Patriots was the best available job, but Vrabel took that. That came off the board before Ben Johnson's season was even done. It seemed like with what I was reading and what was being reported, and who knows if what's being reported is true, right? What is reported is what the parties want out there. It's what the teams want us to hear and want us to think, and what the individuals like Ben Johnson, the other candidates, want us to hear, want us to think. But the 2 best remaining jobs, based on what I've read, were the Raiders and the Bears. The Bears, because they have a lot of talent, money, and draft picks. It's kind of a chance to get a young team and to start from scratch. And the Raiders, because of Tom Brady and good-ish draft capital, I guess. They're not a disaster like the Jags, right? They're not in salary cap prison like the Saints. They're kind of a mess. It was between the Raiders and the Bears, from what we were reading with Ben Johnson. It's a tough decision because you're either going to coach in a division in the AFC West that has Sean Payton, Andy Reid, and Jim Harbaugh, or you're going to coach in the division where he's been coaching as a coordinator, which is Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, and Matt LaFleur. Now, Matt LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell, Dan Campbell, that's not Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh, and Sean Payton, but there are no freebies in either one of these divisions. It's not like you're going to the AFC South where you can beat up on the Titans, right, and the Jags. Man. And this is why cracking into the league as a head coach and succeeding is hard, because these jobs are open for a reason, right? It's very rare a job comes open where like you have an amazing proven quarterback and a GM and an owner that knows what they're doing. Good owners aren't constantly firing coaches. General managers aren't constantly looking for coaches because the good teams, the good jobs don't come open because those coaches win. It's easier to win in those jobs. So we'll talk more about some of the coaching news. We could talk more about Ben Johnson later on in the show. This is the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. I'm happy to have you here. 608-321-1670 is the number. The live stream, you can comment on there, YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter at Wisco Grant. At least at the beginning of the show, I want to react to the games from this weekend. I want to talk about the games. We'll talk about Ben Johnson, but we have all offseason to do that. I don't really want to have big picture conversations tonight. I don't really want to talk about the state of the league or abstract offseason stuff. We're in the final couple of weeks of football. We now have championship weekend and the Super Bowl, and we have the national championship in college tonight, which is interesting. I'm excited to watch. I don't have a ton to say about that, but this weekend was kind of the final huge weekend for football, and I want to cherish all of those games. I want to talk about all of those games. Bill's show flew by earlier today just because we were bouncing around talking about the Lions and the Commanders and the Chiefs and the Eagles and the Ravens, and this is the last time we're really going to be able to discuss a lot of NFL games on a Monday. So I want to take advantage of that. I want to talk about each one of these games. I have a take for each, and as the show goes along, we can dive deeper into each one of these games and, you know, in different ways, I suppose, relate these games and the teams and the players in these games, the coaches in these games back to the Packers. Let's just go in chronological order. I have at least one take. I have at least one thought on each of these games. Let's start with Houston, Kansas City. The Texans had a really nice win last weekend against the Chargers. They have an outstanding pass rush, Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. But for the most part, I think their season was a little bit of a disappointment relative to expectations. You could maybe say that about the Packers, but I think Houston relative to expectations was probably a little bit more of a disappointment. I don't think they were all that great. They had a nice win last weekend, and that certainly, you know, I think helped put a little seasoning on what was kind of a middling, disappointing season, especially for CJ Stroud. I picked the Chiefs to win and cover. They didn't cover because they took a safety at the end, whatever. That's why I don't bet actual money on these stupid games. They were 9.5-point favorites for a reason. They were obviously better. They were at home. My Chiefs take up until this point has been, I'm not pulling for them, but I'm not necessarily pulling against them like many people are. I don't hate them, right? In fact, I think it's kind of fun when there's a team in the mix that everyone hates. I find it entertaining the way in which everyone gets bent out of shape, the way that everyone gets angry about the Chiefs. I think that's entertaining. That's good. That makes for good narratives. That makes for good entertainment. So if the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl again, well, everyone will be cheering against them. They'll be the villain. That'll be fun. So I'm not anti-Chiefs. I'm not waving pom-poms for them. I'm not cheering for them, but I'm not necessarily cheering against them like most people are. I might hate Mahomes a little bit after Saturday's game. I might be out. Maybe I am pulling against him now. I'm definitely going to cheer for the Bills, but I might be cheering a little bit harder after this weekend because that flop along the sideline, the roughing the passer, he has no control over. And the unnecessary roughness he took when he could have gone out of bounds, and then he kind of winded his way back into the field of play, and he's kind of toying with defenders a little bit, and then he goes down. Those penalties are called by the officials. That's an officiating problem. That's a league problem. Now, I would prefer for Mahomes to go out of bounds, but if he's not going out of bounds, I don't think that a hit inbounds should be flagged. He's a ball carrier, right? He's a runner. That's a league issue. That's an officiating issue. That play that wasn't flagged, where he's running out of bounds and he kind of lets up and stops, waits for the contact, and then flops out. Out. I'm out. That's the grossest thing. It's actually kind of cool. If you watch NFL games, there's lots of hits that take place along the sideline. Lots of contact, there's a lot of players, as they're going out of bounds, they take a shove, they take a push. I can't really think of a time where a player has flopped. And they have so many opportunities to flop. Constantly have opportunities to flop when there's hits along the sideline. Constantly when a guy's running out of bounds, he takes a little shove, right, where they could fall over and they could impel. Players don't do it. Right? You never see it. In soccer, you see flops all the time. In basketball, you see flops all the time. In football, at least on hits around the sideline, you never really see it. It's like this unspoken thing. And I think that's a great thing about the NFL is these guys have a little pride when they're running out of bounds. Then I'm not going to flop over and try to draw a flag on a late hit. Now, if I take a shot and I go down organically, okay, well, I might get up and look for a flag because it would be warranted. Players don't really flop along the sideline. And to see Mahomes do that, puke. Gross. I'm out. So if the Chiefs lose, I think it will be warranted. I was kind of cheering against the Lions ever since that Dan Skipper flop on Quay Walker when he started a shoving match, and then Quay Walker shoved him back, and then Dan Flipper out. I'm happy they lost simply because Dan Skipper now has to lose. I don't accept flopping in the NFL. I'm glad that it's a league that doesn't include flopping. I could take the roughing the passer, right? Unnecessary roughness in the field of play. That's a league problem. That's an officiating problem. That flop along the sideline, I hope Patrick Mahomes gets lit up. And now I kind of hope the Chiefs lose. Before I was indifferent. Now I'm different. Now I'm really going to be cheering for the Bills with probably most of America in the AFC Championship game coming up next this weekend. Washington and Detroit, the Saturday night game. This is the game that we expected 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? When the Lions kind of reached the point of no return with injuries on their defense. All of the takes around the Lions, all the conversation surrounding the Lions was they just don't have the guys. They don't have the guys. They're not going to be able to get stops. And unless their offense is perfect, and unless Jared Goff plays mistake-free football, they're not going to be able to beat anyone. And then they beat San Francisco when their offense was perfect. And then they beat Minnesota in Week 18 when their defense just played out of its gourd. And we kind of, I think, over the last week, over the bye, stopped worrying about the defensive injuries, stopped worrying about, well, if the offense isn't perfect, we kind of were like, oh, okay, this Lions team, they can do it. And then what happened to the Lions on Saturday night? That was the exact type of game that folks were talking about, right? Detroit's defense couldn't get a stop, and the offense wasn't perfect. They had a couple mistakes. Jared Goff had a couple of mistakes. A trick play with Jamison Williams didn't work, or whatever receiver they had. I think it was Jamison Williams, but it might have been someone else who threw that pass that was intercepted. That was the game on Saturday night that people have been talking about and that people had been expecting. It just came to pass a couple of weeks later than most people thought, and I think we had been lulled into the sense of security with the Lions. Well, maybe their defense will be okay, and maybe Jared Goff will play mistake-free football. Well, he had for a couple of weeks, and their defense had been okay for a couple of weeks, but Saturday, that was the game that everyone had been afraid of for the Lions for the last couple of weeks. And you know what? I'd like to think Detroit makes the Super Bowl if their defense is healthy, because I just have so much respect for what Dan Campbell has built, and both of their coordinators are awesome. But now coming out of that game, people are questioning Jared Goff. Well, can you really win in the playoffs with Jared Goff? Can you trust him in the biggest moments? And now both coordinators are set to leave. Ben Johnson, we learned about an hour and a half ago, he's going to the Bears, like I said at the start of the show. And it's not just those two coordinators are leaving. I would imagine Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn are probably going to take members or try to take members off Detroit staff with them. Right? Because Ben Johnson can now go to Chicago and say, hey, great young offensive mind who might be my natural replacement in Detroit. I can bring you here and make you offensive coordinator. I can give you a title. And then Detroit either has to make that guy offensive coordinator. He's probably going to leave. Right? Same on the defensive side of the ball. So it's not just the coordinators themselves that are leaving. They might try to take other guys as well. And that's often forgot about. And Detroit's got a lot of free agents. I think Dan Campbell's great. And I think that team has really built something. And I think they'll continue to be great. But you don't know. They have a lot of things to address this offseason. And I can't decide if I believe, well, if Detroit's defense would have been healthy, they would have been able to do it. I'd like to think so, but I'm not sure. I guess we'll never know, which is part of the brutality of losing in the NFL playoffs. Packers fans, you're well aware. Detroit's fan base now over the last 2 years has become aware of that as well. The first game yesterday, Los Angeles and Philly. I really wanted to see the Rams win. I really like the Rams. And while I don't really have anything against the Eagles, I've seen that movie before. I don't need to see Chiefs-Eagles again. I'm really hoping that we don't see Chiefs-Eagles again. Now, Chiefs-Bills, okay, I would just rather avoid the Eagles in the Super Bowl. We've seen that a couple of times over the last few years. The Rams almost did this thing. Kevin Cole, who I believe used to be at Pro Football Focus, now he does his own thing, as many smart foot people and sports people do. Unexpected Points, you might follow him on Twitter, just at Kevin Cole. He posted some of the deeper metrics of all of the games. Take these with a grain of salt, of course. They're not gospel, but one of the metrics he always does at his Substack and through his models, his data models, is adjusted score, right? So if you pour through all of the yards per play, EPA per play, DVOA, all of those things, it's like, well, this is what the score should have been. And we see this in baseball. We see this in sports. In the case of all 4 of the games over the weekend, the adjusted score was either tied or the team that lost actually came out ahead. So the Chiefs are losing in the model, in the adjusted score. They would have lost this game 17-22. In the case of the Lions and the Commanders, the Lions, actually the adjusted score says tie, 31-31. In the case of the Bills and the Ravens Ravens tied, adjusted score 24-24. These games are very close. And in the case of the Eagles and the Rams, score would have been tied as well. I share that with you, not really to be nerdy and to, talk about data and models and stuff like that. My point is, right, Rams-Eagles was really close. In fact, if you look at some of the numbers from this game, the Eagles maybe should have won. But Philly feels far and away like the best roster remaining in football. Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio are both proven, legitimate coordinators. In the case of Vic Fangio, he's been head coach before. Kellen Moore, I think, would be who I'd bet my money on to be the next coach of the Cowboys. They have an elite defense, elite defense. Secondary, defensive line, linebackers, elite O-line, the best running back in football, 2 studs at wide receiver, and a really solid tight end. Now, I don't think Hurts is awesome, but shouldn't they have handled the Rams a little bit better than they did? Shouldn't they have handled the Packers a little bit better than they did? I saw this tweet from Max Toscano today, who's a football blogger, has his own site and everything. Pete shared this, which I saw it. He tweeted today, the fact that Jalen Hurts doesn't put up Tua Brock Purdy level efficiency in the passing game with this run game and those receivers and this pass protection is something I find a little bit telling. I think it shakes out in the final score. Jalen Hurts has the best defense in football, the best O-line in football, 2 star wide receivers, a great tight end, and the best running back in the league. And it doesn't feel easy. It's one thing for him to not throw for 300 yards. I get that. It's another for his passing yards that he gets to feel like such a struggle. And I understand the elements were a thing. It's just chunky. For as perfect as that team is, it just feels like it should be working a little bit better, and it's not. And I guess you could chalk that up to Jalen Hurts. Maybe we could talk more about that. The Eagles and the Rams, probably the least interesting game to talk about, even though I think the Eagles are the best team remaining top to bottom. Lastly, last night, Baltimore and Buffalo. This wasn't the most entertaining game of the weekend. Detroit and Washington probably was. But you could feel the stakes in this game, right? When you turned it on your TV, you could feel the importance. You could feel the weight of this game to the ledger of both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, meaning, man, if Lamar wins this, it means X. And if he loses, it means Y, right? And same with Josh Allen. What this means, I don't want to say to their legacies, because that one game in the division round isn't legacy defining, but this game mattered a ton for both of these quarterbacks. I'd argue, especially for Lamar. And I brought this up before a couple of times this season. Everyone talks about the Ravens like this is their first season of football we've ever watched. Everyone talks about the Ravens like they're an expansion team, and we have no evidence before this year. I mean, it's got to be the Ravens, right? Their defense is unbelievable. They have an elite running game. They have a coach who's done it before. Lamar's playing his best football ever. Yeah, all of that is true. The problem is, though, that's been true now of this team and of this quarterback multiple times. You know what I mean? We've said all of that before. Oh, the Ravens have the best running game in football. Amazing defense. Great coach. Yeah, we said that in 2019. And we've said it before like 2 or 3 times. People have got caught up in saying that this year's different for the Ravens. Yeah, I've heard that before. We've said that before, and it's never come to pass. And I'm not saying it's all on Lamar, because if Mark Andrews doesn't fumble and catches that 2-point conversion, the Ravens could have easily won. But we're to the point now where Lamar has 12 touchdowns and 11 turnovers in 8 career playoff games. In 4 of those games, in half of his career playoff games, he has 2 or more turnovers. He's got a home loss to the Chargers, which I don't really blame him because that was his first year starting, I believe, but that was at home. The next year's the 1 seed. Off a bye, they lost at home to the Titans. Last season, they had the Chiefs at home. They needed to score 17 to win and couldn't do it. If Lamar was an NBA superstar, woof. He'd be bullied. He would be bullied. If he wins this 3rd MVP, he'd be bullied for it if he was an NBA player. He would be criticized for his success in the regular season. And as I've said throughout the season, I'm glad that we don't talk about the NFL the way that folks talk about the NBA, because it's negative and it's bitchy and whiny and everyone's a hater of someone or something. This is why I don't take the cheese on Baltimore. Well, they have an elite running game and a great coach, and look at this defense, and Lamar's playing the best ball of his career. Yeah, that's been true like 3 times in the last 5 years, and it's never amounted to anything. Just like this year, it didn't amount to anything. So I'm not trying to tell you that Lamar isn't all that because he's great, but are we going to do this again next year when the Ravens look great? Oh, this year will be different. I don't know, maybe, but until it's different, are we all going to stop taking the cheese on Baltimore, at least for the time being? If you have thoughts on any of the games, any of these teams, or maybe the championship round, which is coming up now this weekend, or the national championship game tonight, to your phones next, 608-321-1670.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It just hurts to lose, man. And I don't care if you're the 7 seed, 6 seed, 5 seed, 1 seed, because I've lost at all of them damn near, and it stings and it hurts. So, you know, it hurts. It's hard, you know, when you lose these games, man. It's like the players, you know. What they put into it. A lot of people don't know, you know, what they go through. You have to get up, bodies beat to shit, and, you know, mentally stay locked in and do those things. So long season.
What happened on the 12-minute on the field penalty?
It's my fault. It's my fault.
As Dan Campbell after the game on Saturday night. Emotional. Man, showing emotion. Can't be doing that. At least I've been told by Packers people. Matt LaFleur shows too much emotion. Or is that just the rule for Matt LaFleur? Kevin O'Connell sounded a little broken up a week ago, Monday night after his playoff loss. I can play you that audio if I need to further make my point. Also, Kevin O'Connell giving the refs an earful. Pretty animated that Monday night game when they reversed that Matt Stafford fumble into an incomplete pass. Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings players and fans and media, I think, feeling rightfully frustrated by that. Coaches show emotion. It's fine. I don't know why we apply some of these arguments and these criticisms to Matt LaFleur, and then we watch other coaches be like, oh, Dan Campbell, he's showing emotion. You can just tell how much it means to him. My issue with Matt LaFleur this year is his scheme regressed, and he forgot how to manage a clock and challenge plays. He could ball after every play on the side. I don't care as long as he calls the right plays and runs a good scheme and manages the game. But little audio from Dan Campbell. We're reacting to the games over the weekend. I want to savor these games. I want to talk about what happened on Saturday afternoon and yesterday afternoon, because pretty soon we're not going to have games to talk about. We'll have the national championship game tonight. As Clemhead Mike says on the stream, touchdown Jesus. I am cheering for Notre Dame. Not that strongly. If Notre Dame wins, cool. As a card-carrying baptized Catholic myself, that's great. It's great for us, great for the tribe. But if Ohio State wins, like, okay, then the Big Ten gets one. And I don't have a ton of conference allegiance. Like, I don't completely explode out of bed every morning during Bulls season. Like, yeah, where's a Big Ten team I can cheer for? But it'd be two straight years, 2 straight national championships for the Big Ten. Stuff that down the SEC's throat. So it's a win-win, I think, for the most part tonight for me and the way I view college football. You don't have to agree. That's fine. It's just kind of how I see it. I'm just hoping for a good game. I think Ohio State might run away with it a little bit. I don't know. My bit of analysis on this is the same as Ohio State, Texas. Like, if this game stays low scoring, totally think Notre Dame can win. I just don't think Notre Dame, similar to Texas, has the firepower and the horses if this game gets up into the upper 20s or into the 30s. So the path to victory for Notre Dame, let's put it, is a lot narrower than the path to victory for Ohio State. But the path to victory for Jesus was very narrow once upon a time, and he found victory. So maybe Notre Dame can, I don't know what I'm saying. I want to talk about the NFL games from the weekend is what I was saying. Talking a little bit about the Lions. Bill asked me earlier today, who's better positioned moving forward, the Packers or the Lions? And then the Packers or the Vikings. The Packers are in an interesting spot this offseason compared to the Vikings, compared to the Lions. The Vikings are going to have a lot of outgoing free agents. We assume Sam Darnold is going to be one of them, so they will be making a change at quarterback as well. Time will tell if Brian Flores gets a head coaching job. We'll have to see. I think he's a great candidate. He was a little prickly with Tua the first time around, but I don't know. You would think that he would learn from experience like that. Certain players really seem to like him, right? Not that dissimilar from Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer had his guys. Chad Greenway loved him. Harrison Smith and others, at least from what I remember. Maybe I'm wrong about Harrison Smith, but I remember Greenway being one. Zimmer had his guys, and his guys loved his method of coaching, loved playing for him. I think there are players that feel similarly about Flores, Van Ginkel and others who followed him to Minnesota and signed shorter-term deals to play for him. We'll see. Minnesota could be making a change at quarterback, could be making a change for the third time in 3 years at defensive coordinator. And they have a lot of one-year players or players that they will have to replace or re-sign or whatever. There's a lot of movement. The Lions are going to have to, we assume, replace 2 coordinators. Ben Johnson has already left. He became the coach of the Bears a little over an hour ago. Breaking news if you haven't heard that up until now. And Aaron Glenn, who Adam Schefter, and I played the cut from his interview on McAfee last week. He said, Johnson and Glenn are getting head coaching jobs. I feel confident in saying that. The other 4 openings, we'll have to see. But those 2, he said, I would book it. I would lock it in. So the Lions, we assume, are going to have to replace 2 coordinators and possibly some assistants if Glenn and Johnson are able to take guys with them. So that remains to be seen. And the Lions are going to have to figure out, players coming back off of injury, potential free agents. The Packers really don't have a lot of free agents. And they're not losing coordinators. They're going to have to get a new D-line coach. Jason Rebervich was fired. We talked about that on Friday, too. I think the Packers are the most stable team in the division. Now, maybe they won't be as talented. Maybe the Lions and the Vikings will just be better. Maybe they'll replace guys. Maybe they'll get new coaches and the players will be better. The Packers should have more stability. And I think that matters quite a bit. But Dan Campbell and Kevin O'Connell have created nice cultures, really good cultures in those cities that should be able to persist through different coordinators, different coaches, different players. So we'll see. I like the Packers' stability. I still question whether they will have enough elite high-end talent to match some of the other strong teams in their division. We'll see what the Bears. Look, I'm done assigning any credit to the Bears. I thought the Bears were going to be different this year. With Caleb Williams and with all that talent, I said, no, the Bears will be legit this year. And they weren't even close. So I'm not stepping in the bear trap of, well, now they have Ben Johnson. Now they'll be, they're going to need to show me before I ever buy into that ever again. I'm not taking that cheese again. 608-321-1670. Let's take a call or two. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, Tony from Texas. Great
Tony.
Start to the show. It sounds like you're a Howie Roseman fan. I did not know that.
Well, just because I love their roster. I mean, that roster top to bottom is
just like
it's unbelievable. They don't have a weakness. What's their weakest link?
Quarterback.
But I mean, he was good enough to play Patrick Mahomes and almost beat him in a Super Bowl. It's not like their quarterback is a bum. It's not like he's Jimmy G.
No, but I could make a case the Packers are right there with them. Here's the difference between the Packers and the Eagles, though.
Okay.
In the last 3 years, the Packers have been eliminated because of their offense. Let's look back. That San Fran game, I know the special teams had the punt, but they didn't score anything with Rodgers. They didn't score much against the 49ers, and they could have at the very end of that fourth quarter. And the fourth quarter was just a drag, that game against the Niners at San Fran last year. They just couldn't get anything going offensively. And then the last game, this past year against the Eagles, we didn't do anything at all in that game offensively. So they've got to get more explosive on offense. They've got to find ways. What that is, if that's on the roster currently, I don't know. I mean, but you want to talk about that? They got to get more explosive on offense.
Well, and I think, and Bill kept saying earlier today, well, they need to find a number one wide receiver. I think they need to probably bring somebody, like they need to acquire in free agency or in a trade or draft someone with the speed of Christian Watson to help beat man coverage, especially if Dennis Allen is going to be the DC in Chicago, because that's another, I mean, the book is out on Jordan Love and these wide receivers. You man them up and you play physical and you force them to beat you. So I think they need to add, but I think the number one box that needs to be checked this offseason is Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, and Romeo Doubs need to take a nice step, a step that we anticipated them taking this year and they didn't. I still think the internal development at wide receiver is the most important thing on offense.
Yeah, I agree. And the quarterback's got to get better too. Hey, quickly about the games this past weekend, great games. You know, what's interesting is two guys kind of are having these legacies built both on losses this week. Matthew Stafford, what a badass that guy is. He's getting more respect from me in losses sometimes.
Sure.
And then Lamar, I thought, who had a very rough start to the game, I thought came on and did some good things. But even that last play that was dropped by Andrews, and that's on Andrews, Lamar still didn't make the quick read, did kind of double pumped it, kind of threw it like something like you and I would at the playground, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to discredit Lamar's effect on that drop. I don't think it was an easy catch. But Lamar he's got to be better in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then Matthew Stafford's a badass.
Yeah, I'm with you on Stafford and the Rams. Every year that I watch them, I like them and I think more of them. Let me ask you this, Tony, before I let you go. If that end of the end, that 2-point conversion with the Ravens, if that was the Packers and Jordan Love was throwing that ball to Jaden Reed or Romeo Doubs and it was dropped, what would we be saying today? What do you think the reaction would be?
We'd be killing the receiver.
You don't think there would be any criticism of Jordan Love? I bet. My point is, I bet a lot of people would be like, Love's got to throw a better. It's got to be caught, but Love has to throw a better ball too.
You and I would.
Sure.
I think you and I would because we know a little bit more. But I mean, the layman, the person that's just watching the guys from the morning show probably would have been blaming the receiver.
Okay, well, I don't know that was a necessary shot. I appreciate Tony. My point, that felt so Aaron Rodgers-ish. That Ravens game, the Lamar Jackson ending to the game. Not the drop and the throw, but just the big picture of it all. Because folks came away from that game saying things like, well, Lamar didn't have a great first half, but if Mark Andrews doesn't fumble and if Mark Andrews just catches the ball, we're not talking about the first half, right? So people are trying, this is why it feels so Aaron Rodgers-ish, because Rodgers was lose playoff games where he could have played a little bit better, right? There were some missed opportunities, or maybe there was an interception or a mistake, but he also led a great drive at the end of the game. And right? And there was also like a punt block or a fumble or something stupid. So we wouldn't know what to do with these playoff games. We'd come away from these playoff games thinking, well, yeah, Rodgers wasn't perfect, but if the defense just doesn't let Larry Fitzgerald free, you know what I mean? Reaction is very mixed. Like, people want to assign some blame to the quarterback, but not all of the blame. But also, it's not fair to pin the entire game on the wide receiver that dropped the pass because Lamar had 2 turnovers himself in the first half. Do you understand when I say it feels very Aaron Rodgers-ish? We're trying to figure out who to blame for a playoff loss. The quarterback wasn't perfect, far from it, but you feel like the quarterback maybe did enough if he had just gotten some help, and Lamar didn't get help, and all too often Rodgers didn't get help. Rodgers wasn't perfect, but he often didn't get enough help. That Lamar Jackson performance in that playoff loss felt very Aaron Rodgers-ish. Like the conversations that are being had in Baltimore today on sports radio by sports radio fans, I bet are very similar to conversations that we've had Monday afternoons after the Packers have lost playoff games, especially with Aaron Rodgers, right? When they'd go year after year, it's like, well, Lamar wasn't perfect, but also he should have been good enough if the other guys made their plays, right? The Ravens fan base, I bet, has reached a very similar spot that the Packers fan base had reached year after year after year, where we're just kind of chasing our tail. It's not all on the quarterback, but the quarterback should have been good enough. And it's a very dissatisfying way to lose a playoff game because you can't just pin it all on one person. And, the quarterback wasn't great, but you can't assign all of the blame to the quarterback. Felt very Aaron Rodgers-ish. It's what I wrote down in my notes earlier today. So I'm glad that Tony in Texas brought that up. Good call, Tony. I appreciate it. Even though the call to the morning show felt slightly unwarranted. Let's take a break. We'll continue these discussions next and more of your calls. If you have anything to say, 608-321-1670. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
From all the feedback I got, they ran a very smooth process in this case. It was Ryan Poles was the point person on it, with Kevin Warren, of course, overseeing him here. Kevin Warren's entire history would tell you he was gonna work with the McCaskies to make sure they got the best, and that nothing, money or structure or moving fast, whatever it was, nothing was going to stop them from getting the guy that they wanted to. So they moved very quickly. Obviously, the Lions lost on Saturday night. Ben Johnson had all kinds of exit meetings and stuff that he was going through yesterday. He did his research. He looked into the teams, but he was in a different mindset than he'd been the past couple of years when he turned down other opportunities here. The Bears made him feel good because you're right. There's certainly, I think, in the media and among fans, there's skepticism about the Bears just based on their history, based on things that people have said and written recently here. But the bottom line is this. If you're a Bears fan, you want them to get the number one target, the guy that they want. Financially and otherwise, the Bears are willing to do what it takes, and now Ben Johnson's come to Chicago.
That's Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network. He was on 670 The Score. Who took Parkin's slot? Is it not Bernstein and Spiegel? Spiegel and... I like the show. Whoever... And I can picture his face. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm like, who took Parkin's spot? I can't remember. But that was on 670 The Score 40 minutes ago. Tom Pelissero talking about some of the details. I also saw some reporting from Diana Rossini that folks around the league were surprised that Ben Johnson chose the Bears job. Look, these jobs are open for a reason. And none of them are really awesome. If they were awesome, they wouldn't be open. It's very rare when a great job in a winnable division with a good quarterback comes open. It just doesn't happen very often. And I thought the Patriots is far and away the best job. The Bears, with the talent and the quarterback and the draft picks and the money, a very good job. But people don't love the ownership situation, the general manager, Ryan Poles. Most high-level elite coaching candidates get the opportunity to bring their own guy, which is why the Raiders blew out Tom Telesco. Not that Tom Telesco is a bad GM. They just wanted to give the opportunity to an elite coach like Ben Johnson to bring his own personnel guy. He didn't even need that in Chicago. Also, it's reported that he didn't like the situation in Jacksonville, which many smart football people are interpreting and sharing on Twitter, which is what I've seen, that he didn't want to work for Trent Baalke, who's the general manager there, which is interesting. Ted Nguyen, who is at The Athletic, it's probably a name you know if you read The Athletic or you're on NFL Twitter, basically tweeted ownership chose Trent Baalke over Jim Harbaugh and Ben Johnson. Right? Because Jim Harbaugh would have not wanted to work for Baalke. Ben Johnson obviously didn't want to work for Baalke. The Bears might have been his first pick anyways. None of these jobs are awesome. I got to go coach the Jags. And the Raiders, like if they had a top 3 pick and the ability to quarterback, maybe that would put the Raiders over the top. But their division is impossible to win. Harbaugh, Sean Payton, and Andy Reid. Yeah, welcome to being an NFL head coach. Good luck not getting last in that division. So I guess Bears make sense. We're reacting to the games over the weekend. I want to get back to your calls here in just a sec. Cindy from Madison with a good point texted in about Lamar Jackson, that final pass. Said, hey, yesterday's pass that Lamar Jackson made was all on Lamar. That ball was low to begin with. I'm really sick of the MVP talk with Lamar. He can't win the big games. He's not the MVP of the NFL. Everybody had him slated from day one at the beginning of the season of the MVP. I'm not sure about that. I can't speak to that last part. I do think that if that happened to the Packers, that exact game, and it was Tucker Kraft who had the ball go off his hands, there would be plenty of people saying today, yeah, that ball's got to be caught, but Jordan Love threw a crummy pass. It's got to be higher, right? Don't make him go down and get it. Look, I'm not going to attack Lamar Jackson for being some sort of fraud today. He has 8 career playoff games, and in those 8 games, he's scored 12 touchdowns and 11 turnovers. And he's got more than 2 turnovers in 4 of his 8 playoff games, half of his career games. My frustration isn't necessarily with Lamar. It's that smart football people every year for the final month of the year goes, this is the Ravens' year. I'm like, haven't we done this before? We do this every year. And it's never been the Ravens' year. So I don't understand why everyone continues to take the bait. 608-321-1670. Let's take a call. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, it's Ted Nugent. How's it going,
Hey,
man?
What's going on, Big Ron? All right. Sorry to put you on blast for giving out a crummy gambling pick last week. As I said to you in our DM, I just needed an icebreaker to get into the show, and that was a funny anecdote, so sorry.
No worries, Grant. No apologies necessary. So I just want to congratulate the Chicago Bears for winning the offseason again. They have built up just a prolific dynasty in offseason victories. As far as the games this weekend, I just, as a rule, as a gambling man, I do not bet against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. I think he is the new Tom Brady.
Yeah.
You don't bet against him, and because when you're betting against him, you're not only betting against the Chiefs, but you're betting against the refs too. I mean, that was ridiculous. Those 2 players jumping over him, running into each other and getting called for a penalty.
Well, and I have some audio from Aikman. I'll play it to start the next hour. That's a ref problem. That's not a Mahomes problem. The problem is the refs allow him to, I'm going to go out of bounds. Oh, maybe I won't. No, I'm going to come back in. And, is there a lane for me to go? Like he's surveying the field. And then, and only when he realizes he's about to be hit, he ducks. And guys are coming in to hit him already. Like, that's BS. The refs can't let him get away with that. The flop headed out of bounds, that is a personal indictment on Patrick Mahomes, the human being. And I think much less of him today than I did on Friday because of that move on the sideline.
Yeah, Lamar's probably going to win his 3rd MVP because the same voters that voted him first team All-Pro are the same people who vote for the MVP. So he's probably going to win his 3rd MVP. And I'm telling you, if Jordan Love had his playoff record, Jordan Love would be run out of town.
Interesting.
People would want his head on a platter.
Yeah, but have you noticed this too, Big Ron? When you listen to a lot of sports talk, and when you watch ESPN and these shows, it's people talk about the Ravens like this is the first year the Ravens are around. Because all of the things that were true of this year's Ravens have been true of the Ravens in the past. And then they get to the playoffs and they lose a game they shouldn't lose. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm all over the Chiefs next weekend. This line on tonight for the college football game, it's up to 9. Everyone's piling on Ohio State. I think if it gets up to 10, I'll take Notre Dame. And then I think there's going to be a pick 6. That's my big prop bet. So.
Anytime pick 6?
Anytime pick 6. Either team, it's plus odds. It's like plus 230 or something like that.
I feel like Notre Dame gets a pick 6, and then they lose by 2 touchdowns. That's what I'm feeling.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a defensive struggle. I don't know. I might like the under.
Well, if it's a defensive struggle, then here's the thing. Big Ron, that's a great call. I appreciate you. And again, sorry to put you on blast last weekend. Here's the thing. If this game gets slow and ugly and feels like Ohio State, Michigan a couple weeks ago, well, then I kind of like Notre Dame. But if this game gets up into the upper 20s, when I say shootout, when I say higher scoring, I don't mean in the 40s. If this game gets up 28-27, if it gets up there, I don't think Notre Dame has the horses, right? If the game is like 20-17, somewhere in there, well, then I might like Notre Dame's coaching and situational, I guess, I don't want to say expertise, but their ability to play situational ball, I might like Notre Dame a little bit more. With the weapons that Ohio State has, it's Texas all over again. Like, Texas is really good and really talented, NFL players everywhere. Do they have the horses to open it up and score a ton? Because Ohio State does. And assuming Ryan Day learned his lesson from that Michigan game, he will use those weapons. They're in a dome in Atlanta on the carpet. I don't know. The path to Notre Dame seems very narrow tonight. But I'm a college football layman, so what the heck do I know? 608-321-1670. Get some more of your texts when we come back, and I have some Troy Aikman audio to play at the beginning of the 5 o'clock hour that I just love.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
First half, I had 2 costly turnovers. Me not holding the safety, me just knowing the coverage, me knowing it was a man, threw a BS interception. It was 7-7 at the time. I believe they scored after that. Battle back, fumble, snap, trying to make something happen. Couldn't throw. It was like a RPO play, so I couldn't really throw the ball to likely, the offensive line was down the field. So I was trying to make something happen. Tried to squeeze the ball, slipped out my hand. Von Miller picked it up, got some yards. I bet that led to points for them. So it's a team effort out there. He been busting his behind, he making plays happen out there on that field for us. Came up short. And like I've been saying all season, every time we're in situations like this, turnovers play a factor. Penalties play a factor. Tonight, the turnovers, we can't have that. And that's why we lost the game, because as you can see, we're moving the ball wonderfully. It's hold on to the ball. I'm sorry for my language, but it's annoying. I'm tired of
That's Lamar Jackson, frustrated, understandably so after the game. Yeah, he had 2 turnovers, didn't play great, but put together 2 huge drives when his team needed him and got let down by some of his teammates. And that's why I was talking about with Tony in Texas earlier. It felt so Aaron Rodgers-y. Where it's like, well, Lamar wasn't good enough, but also if he had just gotten a little help from a teammate or two, made plays when it counted most. Like, you want to fully blame the quarterback, but you can't. But you can't also take all of the blame off the quarterback. Just reminds me so much of an Aaron Rodgers playoff loss. And we reacted to lots of losses that felt just like that over the years. And they get worse. They compound year after year after year. So Ravens fans, I can't imagine you're doing great today. Lions fans as well. I want to go back to the Chiefs, talk about that game. I have some Troy Aikman audio to play for you that's just excellent. Love that half of America's booth. Big Buck and Aikman guy, as you know, if you've listened to the show for any extended period of time. Let's take a call before we take a break to get to Zach's update. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant. Want to be the first to wish you a happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Thank you, Cone. You as well. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Yeah, and, you know, I feel for the Ravens. I kind of wish I was in Baltimore today to listen to their sports radio, because there's a lot of entertainment to be had in misery. As much as those Packer losses sucked, the sports radio therapy session the day after was always must listen, appointment listening. So, kind of jealous we're not in Baltimore today.
Yeah, especially as a third party, right? When you're not miserable, but you can experience others' misery. So that's a good take. I would love to listen to Baltimore. I saw pictures. You were boots on the ground in L.A. for Badgers Trojans on Saturday.
Yeah. Saw the Badgers win their 8th in a row on the road against another formidable Big Ten team. Corner 3, Kamari McGee, the trademark pending on that one, giving the business to Caleb Williams. So just love seeing that. And not sure if you could see it on TV, but Caleb Williams did have a wrist brace on. So I'm wondering if he had some off-season surgery to clean some things up.
He had a cyst removed or something. Someone mentioned on Bill's show earlier today that the cyst was caused by the acetone he used to remove his nail polish. I'm glad I got a laugh. Maybe a pity laugh, but I appreciate the laugh. Are you more, before I let you go, because this is what we're going to talk about next, Cone, are you any farther in or out on Patrick Mahomes after that display of flopping on Saturday? Because I was kind of indifferent on the Chiefs. It's funny that the Chiefs make everyone really upset, so I like that. But now I might be fully out because that was despicable.
It was a disgusting act, no doubt, but I'm still in on Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he is just the definition of a great quarterback. And, he's bending the rules to his advantage. And, I think we see that with, maybe the way LeBron plays. We certainly saw it with the way James Harden played in his prime. So I think, Patrick Mahomes is just taking, what the defense has given him, but also what the refereeing crew has given him. So, I'm cheering for the Chiefs to three-peat here. Not very often we get to, live through greatness, and that's exactly what we have right now. So, I hear a lot of talk about how this tarnishes his legacy. In 30 years, are we going to be talking about that he flopped or that he won 3 straight Super Bowls?
No, well, we're not going to be talking about how he flops. In the here and now, it's very annoying. The roughing the passer and the unnecessary roughness, appreciate it, Cone. That's not on him. The refs give him that stuff. That's on the league. Put that on the referees. The flopping as he goes out of bounds, which wasn't even flagged, thank God, that's embarrassing. And he should feel some shame about that. And I hope he does. Because people in the NFL, on those out of bounds plays, they don't flop. I do not want to open that can of worms. Because Cone mentioned 2 NBA players that bend the rules. Players don't do that in the NFL. I'd like to keep it that way. Hour number 2, Wisco Sports Show next.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, it's a travel day for the Bucks. They're going to make their way to New Orleans, where they'll face off with the Pelicans tomorrow night. Milwaukee's won 4 in a row, including a blowout of a shorthanded Philly squad yesterday. After a 2-8 start, Milwaukee is 22-9 since and sits in 4th place in the Eastern Conference. Again, they'll face the Pelicans tomorrow. Turning to Wisconsin, they're still in Los Angeles. It's where they're going to face off against UCLA tomorrow. Badgers got the first half of their West Coast road trip off to a good start on Saturday with a 15-point win over USC. They did it despite leading scorer John Tanji going scoreless. Coach Greg Gard thinks what they did without him says a lot about what they are as a team.
I think for us to come in here and have your leading scorer not score tells me the depth and versatility of this group and how it's continuing to grow and find different guys. So you score 84 points. He's helped us. So I think that's what makes this team really, really good is that we have a lot of pieces and a lot of weapons.
Badgers have won 7 straight games, including 5 straight in Big Ten play. After starting 0-2, they're now 5-2 in the conference and in 4th place. Again, it'll be the Badgers and Bruins tomorrow night.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Rural Mutual is the #1 farm insurer in Wisconsin for a good reason. As a company founded by farmers, they understand the ag industry and its challenges. Local agents offer farm families the best advice and personalized coverage. Visit ruralmutual.com to find an agent near you.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the national championship could be played tonight in Atlanta as Ohio State and Notre Dame face off. Wisconsin, meanwhile, back at it today with winter workouts starting. That includes more than half of their incoming freshman class, which enrolled early and will take part in spring practice. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Print.
Roll, flip it, got it. Oh, the ball was dropped. He had the 2-point conversion in his hands. Andrews did not hold on.
Oh, my goodness. Oh.
We're going to enjoy this one tonight, turn our attention to the Chiefs tomorrow. We know what they are. You know, they're the perennial of what you want to be in the NFL. You got to beat them to get past them. So, you know, we're going to enjoy this one tonight.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
You got to beat them to get past them. Much is true. Josh Allen after last night's win. We've talked a little bit more about the Ravens side of that game, at least through the first hour of the show. Just because if the Bills would have lost, I think most folks would have looked at the Bills season and thought, disappointing, but what a testament to Josh Allen and his ability to be kind of a playoff team in and of himself. Really without many weapons, and their defense hasn't been as dominant as it has been in the last couple of years. The Ravens were supposed to win that game. They were road favorites. And we heard about this Ravens team, a lot of the same things that we've heard the last couple of years. Well, Lamar's never played this good. Their running game's never been that. Well, they've never had Derrick Henry. And the defense has never been. And again, it didn't matter because they lose. That's what Lamar Ravens teams do. I'm not putting it all on Lamar. Some of it definitely deserves to go on Lamar. He had 2 really bad first half turnovers. But then, of course, in Aaron Rodgers style, when he gets it dialed up and starts playing really well, the rest of the team can't figure it out. Such an Aaron Rodgers-y loss for Lamar and the Ravens. We can continue to talk about that. I have some Troy Aikman audio that's just a delight, and I'm going to play that for you in a couple minutes. We're going to get back to your calls as promised as well. The Monday Mailbag at 5:50. GrantBills21 at gmail.com. That's BILSE. GrantBills21 at gmail.com. I've seen a couple questions come in. There are a couple bangers in there. And the questions can be about anything. I think it's better for the entertainment of the segment if they're not related to sports. But if they are a good sports question or good sports topic, send them anyway. Here's what I don't necessarily need, and this isn't a criticism of anyone or anything. We've spent an hour and 5 minutes so far talking about Bills, Ravens, Chiefs, Texans, Ben Johnson to the Bears. I don't need to do that again in the final 10 minutes. So if you are like, do you think Ben Johnson's going to be a good coach? Just send that in now. That's what we're talking about that now. Just text that in or comment it in. I'll see it. We're talking about it already. We don't need to. Do you get what I'm saying? It's not that the final segment is no sports. We can talk about sports in there, but if it's just an extension of the rest of the show, it's not really a unique segment. You know, this is why I'm such a good program. Like, wow, Grant really understands this radio stuff. I know Pretty brilliant business strategy here. Troy Aikman audio in just a couple minutes. Let's take a call or two first. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, how are we doing? Happy Monday.
Vagabond John, I am excellent. And let me tell you something. You piqued the interest of one Bill Michaels earlier today in a way that most callers cannot with your commentary about Jordan Love's scrambling. That was excellent work.
I owe it solely to the clarity of like 48 straight hours of talking to NFL football fans at blackjack tables in Las Vegas.
Yeah, you're in Vegas, right? You're just out there for pleasure or business? What are you doing out there?
Well, I saw it was going to be cold in Wisconsin, and I have a work trip that starts up tomorrow. And so I just told my boss, I'm just going to go a couple of days early so I can sit around a blackjack table with NFL fans from every team that's playing and watch freaking awesome divisional round. The NFL finally living up to the college football playoff.
I've been to Vegas twice. Where are you staying?
I was at Treasure Island first 2 nights. Now I just moved to the Hilton Curio, which is the what's it called, the Virgin Hotel.
I don't think I've been.
New one.
Hey, Vagabond John, I called the Virgin Hotel and everyone there knew you.
It's actually really funny, okay? So it's the slow season here. A lot of trade shows. World of Concrete happening. We've got a gun show. There's a food expo happening right next to the one I'm going to.
Okay.
And I just pulled into the Curio, and the convention that's happening this week is the Adult Film Entertainment Expo. So I cannot believe that they, A, did that at the Virgin Hotel, which is hilarious.
That is
and
funny.
B, I did not see Tony from Texas in the lobby, so I don't understand. I don't understand what's going on here.
Unless I am misremembering, I don't think I've been to Treasure Island. That's one of the spots. Like, I go to Vegas twice and I act like I'm an expert. It looks just like another Mandalay Bay with the golden windows. It kind of looks like the Venetian too. I'm looking at pictures now, but interesting. Maybe Tony will be there. Maybe he'll comment.
Treasure Island, if you want $10 blackjack and $10 craps, that's the spot in the strip to go to. It also has probably the most affordable sports bar. You know, beers are like $7, which, you know, I could do the same thing in downtown Milwaukee. But enough of that. The Ravens, enough about Mahomes. I thought those conversations were great. I have nothing to add there. But I did want to revisit and circle back to the question that I did pose to Bill Michaels, because thinking about our Packers and what we have to do this offseason, man, everybody at the tables this week is like, oh, you're a Packer fan. You have to be so excited about the future for you guys. All these fans, like right from the outside perspective, they're looking at us and they're like, you guys got a great young core. You're going to be freaking awesome. Like, I
do think they have a great young core. We've yet to see how good they can be and what they can do, but I think they do have. I don't think that's a mischaracterization.
I just don't know if we have the ceiling. And I think the single limiting factor that I'm most concerned about right now, my soapbox for the last week or so, is Jordan Love's inability to move. And we saw it. We talked a little bit about it last week. You said last week, you know, the second worst play of the game was the one where he just panicked, threw the ball into the flat instead of taking the 10 yards in a first down, which was a huge play in the game, right? We often talk about like the interception or the big thing, the big play, but the missed opportunities, obviously Ravens fans understand this, but like the missed opportunities are the ones that can almost hurt you worse. And for Jordan Love, looking at the 4 quarterbacks that are left playing in the playoffs and stacking them up to what we've got for $55 million a year, I think the Packers' number one priority is figuring out how they can compensate for having a statue at quarterback. He's got fewer rushing yards than every quarterback. If you go to statmuse.com, you have to pay for a subscription to find Jordan Love at the bottom of NFL quarterbacks with 87 yards this year. I think it gets better next year, but Grant, that's, you know, talking to fans around everybody. We kind of had those conversations. There's a pretty big consensus that you need an elite pocket passer or a guy that can at least move around a little bit, and that's what I'm a little worried about.
Sure, or at least a guy who can be better at both than he was this year. So that's a good point, Vagabond John. Now, he was hurt this year with 2 pretty significant injuries. So I think he's a better scrambler and a more willing scrambler than the statistics would indicate this season. I think he only had like 50 rushing yards this year. Let me look. I have it up because I figured this might come up if you called. So last year he had 247 rushing yards, which is less than I thought. This year he had 83 rushing yards, which given his 2 injuries is understandable. But that play in Philly, unless he was still hurt or he was still worried about his knee or still worried about his groin, That play that he made rolling to his left with 7 or 8 yards of space in front of him at least. And instead of taking that, he threw a lateral to a play that wasn't close to me, all the way out to the sideline to Emmanuel Wilson, who, I mean, it was such a crummy pass. It went out of bounds. It's like, why? That's not a physical limitation to me. That's not my knee or my groin. I'm not seeing what I need to see, and I'm not trusting what's in front of me. And that's why I brought this up on Bill's show earlier today. And maybe we can get more detailed into this later in the week, Vagabond John. But what I brought up to Bill is there's got to be someone in the Packers organization, maybe on their offensive staff or somebody, a task, a project this offseason is go through the entire season, watch all of Jordan Love's snaps, and find plays where it's like, hey, you could have scrambled here for 8 to 10 yards. Here's a play where you could have stepped up and scrambled for here's a play where you just could have tucked the ball and taken the first down. I don't need them drawing up plays like he's Jalen Hurts. Keepers, draws, read options, those sorts of things. I don't need any of that. Just organic opportunities that present themselves over the course of a season where the defense turns its back and gets far downfield, or the defensive line, the pocket breaks contain, and you have a chance to just tuck the ball and run and get a free first down and slide. It didn't really seem to me like he was seeing those opportunities, even towards the end of the year when we assume he was healthy. I'm not necessarily looking at his 83 rushing yards on the season as an indictment. In fact, there was a Packers reporter who was listening to Bill earlier today who texted me when this came up and said, you guys, you got to remember he had an injury. Yes, he had an injury, and that has to factor into the way we view, especially his counting numbers, his rushing numbers on the whole. He needs to be a better diagnoser and a more decisive player when it comes to tucking the ball and running, to just move the sticks, to get 8 yards when the defense is giving me 8 yards, right? To turn a 2nd and 8 into a 1st and 10 instead of throwing a pass that has no chance, and now we're in 3rd and 8, and the other team can pin their ears back and rush the passer. It's a good point, Vagabond John. Before we take this break, as promised, little Troy Aikman audio. I am just such a fan of America's Booth. Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. Here's a little of Aikman reacting to, this is the not roughing the passer, not the flop out of bounds. I'll give that to you in a moment. This is the play where he goes towards the sideline, comes back in, ducks, and the defenders are called for unnecessary roughness, I believe. Is that
personal foul, unnecessary roughness, defense number 39, 15-yard penalty.
Here's the end of it. Yeah, I mean, he's a runner, and I could not disagree with that one more, and he barely gets hit. That's the 2nd penalty now that's been called against the Texans.
And Troy, I agree with you. There's no forcible contact to the head neck area of him. The two Houston players hit each other. That should not have been a foul.
And they've got to address it in the offseason. You can't, as a quarterback, run around and play games with defenders and then be able to draw a penalty.
I think that is actually an outstanding bit of analysis. When you have 6 seconds to explain a frustration that's being felt by the entire audience, complex, the way the rule is officiated, the way the rule is written, the way that quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes can manipulate it. You can't do a better job of distilling all of that into 7 seconds of analysis.
The two Houston players hit each other. That should not have been a foul. And
it's actually less than 7 seconds. I guess it's 9 seconds. Here's Aikman's bit of analysis. I started that early, and you heard Russell Yerk, or whatever, the nerd that Aikman bullies on.
And they've got to address it in the offseason. You can't, as a quarterback, run around and play games with defenders and then be able to draw a penalty.
It's a perfect bit of analysis. You can't run around and play games with defenders and expect to draw a penalty. You can run around and play games with defenders all you want, but your head might also be separated from your body. That's how football works. That's how it's supposed to work. And I'm not wishing violence on anyone, but he had a perfect play. If you go back and watch that play, just look up Mahomes unnecessary roughness, or look up Aikman, because there's a million cut-ups of it. Awful announcing, always post clips like this. It's a great follow on Twitter. By the way, follow me on Twitter at Wisco Grant, please. Thank you. He has an opportunity to get like 4 yards and duck out of bounds. And a lot of these quarterback scrambles, when they duck out of bounds, you can see it. It's very natural. The way that the blockers set up and the way the defenders position themselves, it's almost like everyone on the field understands, okay, you got us here. You read the field nicely, and you're going to be able to chip away 4 yards before ducking out of bounds. We're going to hold our blocks. We're going to direct you. You're allowed to do that. Mahomes on this play makes a conscious choice to run up to the sideline behind his blocker and then say, no, maybe I can take it back in, surrounded by 3 or 4 defenders, looking like a cat that's escaped the apartment, and now there's 4 people around it in the hallway, and the cat's looking forward, backward, trying to, get control of their surroundings. And then all of a sudden at the last second, he ducks, which is BS. And a problem with the slide rule is because when you duck or when you slide, you are opening yourself up to a nasty hit. This is why running backs don't slide or wide receivers don't slide, is because when you slide, you expose yourself. Wide receivers, running backs, they lean in, right? They bring the ball high and tight. They lean in or they lower their shoulder. They brace for contact. When a quarterback slides or drops, like Mahomes did in that instance, they're doing the opposite. They're opening themselves up, wide up for contact, which if it's done way in advance and the defenders see it coming and there's this unspoken thing, you are going to go down because you don't want me to absolutely mutilate you here like I could, that's fine. But when Patrick Mahomes, as Troy Aikman said, plays games, well, then when he decides to drop, if Patrick Mahomes wants to play games and duck and dive and dodge and dip, and that's fine. But then Mahomes needs to protect himself and understand he's going to get hit. You can't You can't dip and dive and duck and dodge and go around. And then all of a sudden, no, I'm going down. No, because now that's not a natural football play and you're going to get crushed. And then it's going to be the defender's fault. So Aikman, I know he played for the Cowboys. I know nobody likes him. That's a perfect bit of analysis to say you can't be allowed to play games with defenders, because that's exactly what Mahomes does.
And if they've got to address it in the offseason. You can't, as a quarterback, run around and play games with defenders and then be able to draw a penalty.
That's perfect. You can't explain all the dynamics of that situation better in an 8-second soundbite. Here is a 40 seconds. This is when Mahomes tries to go out of bounds, or he's headed out of bounds. And then he stops. He slows up like Chris Paul driving to the rim with the defender trailing him to draw the contact. And then he flops going out of bounds. Here's Buck and Aikman with the call and some more good analysis from Troy.
2nd and goal. Mahomes fakes that little pass and then puts it in his left hand. He kind of flops out of bounds. They're not going to throw a flag. Mahomes trying to get a free first down, won't get it. And a gain of just 2 is To'o is along the sideline to make the stop. He's trying to draw the penalty. You see that rather than just run out of bounds, he slows down. And that's been the frustration, and I get it. I understand it. That's been the frustration for these defensive players around the league.
Defensive players will let a quarterback slide. They'll let him go out of bounds. They have no problem with that, right? Because then they're not risking penalty. They're not risking fines. It's all fine. But when Mahomes starts pulling this crap, he can pull all the crap he wants, but then he's got to be allowed to get hit. And flopping going out of bounds like this is the NBA, that I throw him out of the league before that spreads. Before light the entire forest on fire, lest one invasive species spread. Like, I won't have it. And neither will the American people. This is the one league we have left where, for the most part, there isn't much flopping. 608-321-1670. Let's take a call, then we'll take a break. Let's go Sports Show. Who's this?
This is John in Cornell.
What's up, John? How's it going?
Hey, it's going well. I couldn't agree more with you on your point about Patrick Mahomes. But I do think that, I understand they have this rule for like roughing the passer and stuff, but I think they need to put some kind of parameters to it, because it seems like even not just Patrick Mahomes, but it just seems like if a defensive end does something to a quarterback that is kind of sort of not necessary, it's always called. Like, even, any game you'll see it, and it's like they touch the quarterback and he falls backwards, and it's like, oh, roughing the passer. And it's like, it just like, I understand we need to protect quarterbacks, but I agree with you 100%. Like, there has to be a breaking point where that guy's a player. He's going to get tackled. He's going to get smashed. Tom Brady went through it. Peyton Manning went through it. Brett Favre went through it. They got their clocks cleaned. And now it just seems like if you touch the QB under for whatever reason and it wasn't necessary, the flag is thrown. And it's just like, I to an extent, it kind of drives me up a wall.
And roughing the passer, John, to your point, it's going to be so difficult. That's a great call. It's so difficult to tell. I think it's even harder to tell, like when a player slides late and a defender tries to pull up, and that's really difficult to interpret. Roughing the passer is damn near impossible because these pass rushers, these 300-pound people, are flying at a quarterback, top speed. Ball comes out last second, and the edge rusher's trying to pull up, but the arm's already in the air, so they give him a little bump. It's really difficult to parse out. I also think sometimes the quarterback goes to the ground in a means of self-protection, right? I'm going to fall backwards, almost like you would in basketball. I'm going to fall in a controlled way so my legs don't get caught under me. So I'm going to fall onto my back and try to slide so I don't get landed at, right? Like quarterbacks sometimes go down as a protective measure after throwing the ball, like a little fadeaway, right? So it can't be as simple as, well, if the quarterback goes down after the ball comes out, we're going to get a flag, because sometimes the quarterback goes down. That's by design. It's really difficult to legislate. I am not someone who hates Mahomes. I'm not someone who thinks that the Chiefs and the league, they're on the take together. I don't think any of that. I hated the flop as he's going out of bounds, because that cannot be allowed to happen. I hope the league finds him. I hope the league finds him for it. I think they should. They got to nip that thing in the bud. All of a sudden, we're going to have running backs and wide receivers as they go out of bounds, little contact, and they're going to flop down onto the ground like NBA players would. My whole life, I haven't seen players flop on the sideline like that. It's like an unspoken thing. You don't do it in the NFL. Running backs don't do it. It cannot be allowed to start. And that's separate of Mahomes. League has to come down. I hope they find Mahomes $50,000 for that. Maybe a little silly. I don't know. But they need to do something. That I will not abide. Go Bills. And I'm not anti-Chiefs. If they three-peat, I'll think it's cool. Got no problem with Andy Reid and Travis Kelce in the commercials. Taylor Swift's there. Well, okay, whatever. Taylor Swift's everywhere. It makes no difference to me. But this flopping thing going out of bounds, that sticks up my ass. Okay? Let's take a 3-minute break. Any more thoughts? I'll get to those on the other side. 608-321-1670. The Monday Mailbag, about a half an hour away. Submit your questions or comments or concerns. GrantBills21@gmail.com. More of the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Second and goal. Mahomes fakes that little pass and then puts it in his left hand. He kind of flops out of bounds. They're not going to throw a flag. Mahomes trying to get a free first down, won't get it. And a gain of just 2 is Tillo is along the sideline to make the stop. You know, he's trying to draw the penalty. You see that rather than just run out of bounds, he slows down. And that's been, that's been the frustration. And I get it. I understand it. That's been the frustration for these defensive players around the league.
It's Troy Aikman one more time, admonishing Patrick Mahomes for flopping. Did I use that correctly? It's not a word that I ever use. I don't know why that admonish, warn, or yeah, that sounds right. Warn or reprimand someone firmly. All right. I don't know why that word came to mind, but it did. He was admonishing Patrick Mahomes and the officials in the NFL. I think that bit of analysis that I played you in the last segment, it's perfect. It's so succinct. In 9 seconds, he said that all that needs to be said. And that you can't be allowed to play games with defenders and then expect to draw a flag. Perfect. Perfect bit of analysis, Troy. Cheers to you. I'm a big fan. Coyote Mike follows up on this on the text line, 608-321-1670. You can message me on this very same text line. He says, the NFL should use replay assist, in quotes. Process like they already do for personal fouls, i.e. face masks, quarterback hits, helmet to helmet, horse collars, blindside blocks, fights, punches thrown, etc. I am, for the most part, against the expanse of replay because I don't really think we get more stuff right. I'm still displeased with a lot of the calls and feel like they still don't get a lot of the calls right, and it slows everything down and it opens up doors to controversy and complaining. So for the most part, I'm against replay. Now, the what's it called? The expedited review. Most people really like that. They're like, oh, see, that was so easy. Something was obviously wrong and they fixed it and it took 2 seconds. Okay, yeah, that would be great. I detest the expedited review because it doesn't make any sense to me. It makes no sense to me. Here's what I'm saying. Okay, so Grant, new addition to the NFL this year, we are going to institute what we are going to call an expedited review process. Meaning, if an official spots a ball by a yard or 2, or a catch is very easily reversible at first glance at replay, their toe is out of bounds, their toe is in bounds, for example, something like that, complete or incomplete catch. Maybe the refs just didn't have a good angle. They call it incomplete. And then at a very quick glance at replay, it's very obviously complete, something that doesn't necessitate a long, tedious review. With this new expedited review, Grant, we are going to simply be able to fix that stuff on the fly. We're going to keep the game moving. No need for challenges, no need for anything like that. It's easy. We have the technology, so let's just fix it in real time. I'd say, okay, excellent, NFL spokesperson. I'm all aboard this. So with the expansion of replay and the use of this expedited review, you say, we shouldn't need for coaches to ever challenge plays because the types of plays that would be reversed by challenges would just be reversed with expedited review, correct? Sometimes, maybe, sure. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean sometimes? So coaches will still have to challenge? But yeah, I guess it just it depends, maybe. So we're going to use expedited review sometimes, but not all of the time? Yeah, just kind of whenever it feels right, I guess, is the thing. Okay. Well, if then why do we need challenges? Well, we just think challenges should be a part of the game. But when okay, all right, I'm done asking questions. So in the case of expedited review, there would never be an instance, let's say, where a play is called correctly on the field, only to be reversed incorrectly by expedited review, only to then necessitate a coach challenge the play. I mean, that'd be ridiculous, right? I know. I suppose that could happen. What do you mean? How could you possibly use expedited review to get a call wrong? I don't know. It might happen. And of course, what I'm referencing is it happened in, was it Packers Bears in week 17 when Luke Musgrave caught the ball? And then they're like, actually, after checking it in expedited review, it wasn't a catch. And then everyone watched it on the big board and like, BS, it wasn't a catch. It's obvious. So LaFleur then has to use a challenge. That's why I detest expedited review, is it's used randomly. The standard for its use makes no sense. There's no uniformity. There's no timing that makes sense. It's just an F-off thing. It's like, hey, every once in a while, we're just going to have this guy up in a booth reverse a call with no rhyme or reason when or where. Because there have been countless obvious plays that I've watched coaches have to challenge. Why is a challenge ever necessary if we have this so-called expedited review? I don't like it. So, Coyote Mike, to your point, yeah, if you could just quickly and easily review a roughing the passer or a quarterback hit, but the league has proven they can't do that. The league has 100% proven they absolutely can't do that. Sully in Menominee texts in says, do we think the NFL owners are aware of how ridiculous the enforcing of rules and replay is and they don't care, or are they somehow oblivious to it? Interesting question. It probably depends on the owner. Is what I would say. I bet there are some owners that are intimately involved and they pay attention to all that stuff and they get riled up. And I bet there are other owners who. You think Virginia McCaskey is up in the box complaining about how liberally expedited review is used? She's wondering where her teeth are. You know what I mean? It just depends on the owner. I don't think the NFL's officiating and the rule enforcement is as out of whack as most people think. I wouldn't be talking about this at all today if it wasn't for Patrick Mahomes trying to draw a foul by flopping out of bounds. If Mahomes would have gotten smoked on a roughing the pass, like, I don't care. That's going to happen. Stars are going to get those calls. It's the flopping on his way out of bounds. That's what sticks up my rear end specifically. That's why I'm bringing this up today. Otherwise, officiating, like, the Texans had chances to win that game and didn't. The Packers had plenty of chances in Philly to win that game, even though I think Nixon recovered the ball. And the NFL later came back and said, well, actually, that was a helmet-to-helmet hit, and they fined Oren Burks a pile of money. So, yeah, it's all a little bit messy. But in the end, the better teams are winning most of these games. So I don't worry about this too much. I can't have the flop. That was such a moment. That's a moment I'll remember the rest of my life if it continues to become a problem. And I will remember that as the moment where it all started. That will be, and Aikman could not be more right here.
And if they've got to address it in the offseason. You can't, as a quarterback, run around and play games with defenders and then be able to draw a penalty.
Can't play games with defenders, only to run around and draw a penalty. This is 100% right. Let's take a couple minute break. If you have any more thoughts on any of this, the divisional round, maybe I'll give you a couple thoughts on the Bears hiring Ben Johnson. 608-321-1670. All of that coming up next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
From all the feedback I got, they ran a very smooth process in this case. It was Ryan Poles was the point person on it, with Kevin Warren, of course, overseeing him here. Kevin Warren's entire history would tell you he was gonna work with the McCaskies to make sure they got the best, and that nothing, money or structure or moving fast, whatever it was, nothing was going to stop them from getting the guy that they wanted to. So they moved very quickly. Obviously, the Lions lost on Saturday night. Ben Johnson had all kinds of exit meetings and stuff that he was going through yesterday. He did his research. He looked into the teams, but he was in a different mindset than he'd been the past couple of years when he turned down other opportunities here. The Bears made him feel good because you're right. There's certainly, I think, in the media and among fans, there's skepticism about the Bears just based on their history, based on things that people have said and written recently here. But the bottom line is this. If you're a Bears fan, you want them to get the number one target, the guy that they want. Financially and otherwise, the Bears are willing to do what it takes, and now Ben Johnson's come to Chicago.
It's Tom Pelissero earlier this afternoon on 670 The Score in Chicago, their evening drive show. Just a little bit of information on the way the search was perceived, and the Bears did it right. They threw all their money and resources to get their number one guy. Which historically I don't think has been what they've done, at least not in the case of Eberflus. I don't know about Nagy. There's a lot of revisionist history with Nagy. Some of it's fair. I think some of it's not. He was Andy Reid's lieutenant under Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. Why would you not? Well, I guess previous was before Patrick Mahomes got there, but you took an offensive coordinator or quarterbacks coach from Andy Reid? That makes sense. And then he went to the playoffs with Mitchell Trubisky. So we all want to look back and say, well, the Matt Nagy hire. I feel like it was a good hire. Eberflus, Very Bears. Very, very, very Bears. I think Ben Johnson is a brilliant offensive coordinator. How that translates to being head coach, I don't know. I will say, it sounds like Dennis Allen is his preferred choice for defensive coordinator and Darren Rizzi for special teams coordinator. That would be a staff because both of those guys have had coaching experience. Darren Rizzi just interim coaching experience this year. But if it was Ben Johnson and, this young guy who was with me in Detroit, it feels a little shakier. The presence of Dennis Allen and Darren Rizzi, that's a staff. That could work. We don't know how coaches project. And I see all the Packers people with their podcasters like, well, he's a great OC, but how will he tailor his system and how will he lead it in? Obviously, yes, all of that. We don't know how being an elite offensive coordinator lends itself to being a head coach. You have no way of knowing. But I've said of this Bears roster, their O-line is weak. Everywhere else, they're pretty darn great. So if he can scheme around that and they can fix that a little bit this offseason, and if truly he can bring in Dennis Allen and Darren Rizzi, that could work. That would absolutely probably work. I'm just done saying that the Bears are going to be good this year. I'm not doing that anymore after this last year. They might be, but I'm not putting any take capital on that. Not after this season. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
Eric on I-90. Good evening, Eric.
Good evening, Grant. Beautiful night. Beautiful night out here. A little snow.
Freezing ass cold.
About whopping 1 degree out here, so it ain't too bad. It's all right.
I don't have heated seats, but I do have heated underground parking, which this morning I felt like the richest man in the world.
I have heated seats and a heated steering wheel, so I'm really riding in luxury now.
Lap of luxury. It's good for you, Eric.
Boy, you've talked about so much. The expedited review. Okay?
Yes.
And this no way had anything to do with the outcome of the game. But the Vikings-Rams game, there was a face mask called in that game, and there was no flag thrown at all. And
Are you talking about the first one?
No.
Okay, this is the second one.
In the second game, in the playoff game, yeah. And that's I swear to God that he just got a call from upstairs, and it's like, there was a face mask on that. Oh, face mask, no flag thrown. No flag thrown. So I agree with you. I don't like this because I think there's a misuse of it. Misuse. It didn't affect the outcome of the game. Not whining.
No, you're good. You're good. It just seems so random. You know what I mean? If expedited review is going to be used, then why do we have challenges? Then why do we need to go through that whole charade? You know what I mean?
Right. Why do we have to go through all this stuff?
If it's easily correctable, then why does my coach have to use a challenge on it when expedited review exists?
Yeah, and like Mixon, he probably did get the ball back, but his first mistake was running it out of there in the first place. It was his first mistake. Don't do it. Don't ever do it.
Yeah.
Don't run one back. Unless it's laying on the 5 and stop.
Yeah.
And they can just pick it up.
Yeah.
Right? Other than that, I don't have a lot going on for you here tonight, Grant.
That's okay.
Maybe one other thing.
Sure.
Why? And this will relate to the Packers and Jordan Love. Okay? So, Vikings are going forward, and there's a real strong indication that J.J. McCarthy is going to be the guy they're going to go with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are they hoping for out of J.J. McCarthy over Sam Darnold? Do they think he's going to have better stats? He's probably not. Do they think he's going to win more games? He's probably not. Do they think he's going to be a leader? That's the only reason to go with it, right?
Well, and
not have that look on his face.
I just don't know. I don't know how you can expect Sam Darnold to get it done in the playoffs after this showing these last 2 weeks. You know what I mean? These last 2 games.
No. You can't. It isn't all his fault.
No.
But he's going to take the blame for it.
Well, and now he needs a contract. If Darnold was under contract for another year at a reasonable price, I have no problem. The Vikings would probably have no problem running him out there if they feel like J.J. McCarthy's not ready. The Vikings would probably be fine with having Darnold be their quarterback again next year if that was their best option. It's just the contract, and I think that's where it gets hairy.
Right, but he's going to have a market, and it's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
Right? He's going to have a market. It's going to be a good one. I really highly doubt he's going to be back.
I think.
No, I'm just speaking to his leadership.
Okay.
His
Okay.
leadership, right? His leadership in 2 important games, he fell short. And a lot of us would have fell short, right? Some of us wouldn't have done any better, right?
Sure.
And I think that's Green Bay's problem with Jordan Love is I don't think he's the leader that you guys hope that he is. That's what I think.
Okay, so that's
you can't have your running back lead. You can't have your running back be the leader.
well,
You can't.
and
it
it's
won't get you there.
It's funny because Goody and LaFleur both said this last week, Eric. I appreciate it. Drive safe and stay warm. When asked, hey, what can Jordan do better in year number 3? They both said be a more vocal leader, right? Which is something that Clemens has kind of added some color to. It's like, Jordan Love is the optimist. He's positive. I think what LaFleur wants and what Gutekunst was also speaking to is he needs to get on these guys' ass a little bit if practice isn't detailed or if this or that isn't going on, which I get. Leadership and clutch performance in big moments, I think, are 2 different things. I think Jordan Love, at least based on the comments from coaches and from personnel members who've talked in the last week, could be a more vocal leader. Leadership doesn't mean also performs in clutch. Those are 2 different things. I don't know how Darnold is as a leader. He could be a great leader, but if the lights get too bright, I think that's part of the decision-making process, is part of Darnold's narrative right now. I don't know that that's leadership. I think those are 2 different things. Now, a strong vocal leader, probably more likely to be clutch in the biggest moments because they're vocal, because their personality is big and they're not going to shrink. If you shrink in big moments, you're also probably going to shrink in the locker room when it comes time to chew out a teammate or when it comes time to have a difficult conversation. So maybe those 2 things lend themselves to the other a little bit, but I think leadership and clutch performance in big moments, those are 2 different things. Both important. I'm not sure how Darnold is with the leadership stuff. I just bring up Jordan Love because his coach and his general manager both mentioned it, where I think the beat was looking for more like he needs to get better at throwing intermediate, but he needs to be better at avoiding turnovers because he could step up as a vocal leader is a criticism you have of a player who was near perfect on the field, and Jordan Love was far from it this year. The Monday Mailbag, your questions, grantbills21@gmail.com. Submit them. I will answer them next to wrap up the show.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. Wisco Sports Show will resume in The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Because the mail never stops.
Charles, we'll be writing to you. She's got mail. That's the name of the movie.
That's it, honey.
There's never a let up. It's relentless. Every day it piles up more and more and more, and you got to get it up. And the more you get out, the more it keeps coming in.
The Monday Mailbag. Submit your questions. GrantBills21@gmail.com. Again, it's not that I don't want sports questions. You can ask sports questions. But if the question is just an extension of what we've been talking about for the last 2 hours, then ask it before we get here. This is kind of the fun segment where we get a little wacky. You know what I'm saying? And sports can be a part of that. But I swear, if the email's like, what did you think of Mahomes flopping? I just did that for an hour and a half. So do you understand the goal of the segment? GrantBills21@gmail.com. Support your or submit your questions, comments, concerns. Let's start with a baseball one. Hell yeah. This one is from Daniel. It says, thoughts on Ha-Seong Kim at third base for the Brew Crew? I would love that. And I'm surprised there's not more Bregman buzz. Both Bregman and Kim, Bregman to a lesser degree, Kim definitely, but both of these guys, if you squint at least, can kind of fit the mold of Hoskins, Grandal. There's another one whose name I'm missing. Free agents that don't get the deal they're looking for, right? So they come to Milwaukee and say, hey, we're going to pay you a lot for a year, team option after the second, so we can get out of it if we want, or player option, so you can get out of it, right? So there's some flexibility there. Moustakas was the other one in 19. Bregman turned down a big contract from Houston, and I think if he could go back in time, he might take it. I don't know if he has the interest that he thought he would have. I would love Bregman on a 1 or 2 year prove-it deal, but Bregman's probably... I don't know that Bregman's going to be able to play really well and then turn around and get another massive deal. So I don't know where his head's at. Kim's coming off an injury. Probably won't be ready for opening day, but could fit exactly what they're looking for, which is average offense and pretty good defense. His defense struggled a little bit last year. I think they could maybe fix that. I just want another option that's not Oliver Dunn at third base. And that's not anything against Oliver Dunn. I need a little bit more insulation. I need some more options. Bregman and Kim. Bregman is a pipe dream. Kim might not be. And we're getting to the point in the offseason where if those guys haven't gotten deals yet, there's probably not a deal they love. So why not Milwaukee? I love it, to your point, Daniel, and thank you for bringing up baseball. Big Ron says, if you could be any animal, what would you be? Oh. Maybe a cheetah. I'd love to be able to run that fast. And I don't think they get eaten by other... It's not like they're getting plowed by lions or they just run away. Cheetah would be cool. Be a dignified way to hunt. I have to sprint down my prey. I have to earn it. Clint in Onalaska says, Chiefs and Eagles have just been able to win these games, but I hope the football gods grant us with a Bills-Commanders Super Bowl matchup. Also hope that Hafley is not accepting a coaching position elsewhere. Still a few head coaches open. He had a great season, and that playoff loss was not on him. I look forward to him building this turnaround on defense. More of a comment, really, from Clint. Thank you for the email, though, Clint. Rob in Stoddard, our friend Rob, Bears fan, but Brewers fan, which I love about you, Rob, says, Grant, every friend group calls their friends some kind of nickname or calls them something that they can remember, especially amongst guys. You're darn right about that, Rob. Which one would you say you'd rather be called by your friends in the sports world? Is this you? Are you asking for you? I'm just going to keep reading. Which would you rather be called by your friends in the sports world? The lovable loser or the strikeout king for always striking out? I guess lovable loser, although striking out is kind of in vogue these days, as long as you can slug. The lovable losers, we've lost that with the Cubs. The Cubs have always lost, and they've never really spent up to their full capacity. Tom Ricketts, by the way, at CubsCon this weekend said, we just try to break even, which I think is worse than David Stern's bites at the apple. I would never say either out loud. Good for the Cubs. I also saw Council, by the way, before we get back to the questions, Council said something about Euchre, and this was touching, and I won't joke around this. I promise. A man died. Here's the quote. Let me find it. Here's the question. I'm reading the transcript from CubsCon. Craig, Bob Euchre passed away. Obviously, you spent lots of time with him in Milwaukee all the way back to your childhood. What do you have to say about the passing of Euchre? All right, scrolling to Craig. Here's what he said. And again, this is a direct transcript. This is from the Cubs website. Yeah, I mean, 60 years, Cy is in the transcript. He called a lot of games. Wow. Touching from Craig. Really fitting tribute to a great baseball man. Here's the two questions I was saving for the end. Tyler says TikTok was banned for 12 hours this weekend before President Trump saved the app, allegedly. Let's not get political now. And brought it all back into existence for U.S. citizens, supposedly. What's one app you can't live without? Well, easy answer is Twitter. Because I get so much information and sound bites and things for the show, stats, crap like that. Other than that, Spotify. I don't know if this is a thing. I think I'm somewhat of an audio addict. Like, I will not do anything without putting my AirPods in and listening to music or a podcast. And maybe that's just, I just like to listen to things. There might be a deeper thing where it's like some manifestation of ADD. It's like I can't have the silence. It's not that I'm afraid of being alone with my thoughts. I don't mind that. It's just I'd rather listen to something. So I would say Twitter, obvious answer. Spotify, also probably an obvious answer. I wish that there was like a fun one that I could give you. I'm just not a big app guy. In fact, until recently, I didn't have enough space on my phone for more than like 3 apps. I factory reset it. It was a bug, so we're good now. So I can have my banking app and Venmo, that kind of crap again. Jacob, this is the question of the day. If you had a hobby farm later in life, what animals would you have? Maybe some odd ones like llamas, emus, etc. Funny llama farm story. Kent Dernbach, who now coaches basketball at the University of Stevens Point, was at lacrosse when we were there. Interviewed him multiple times. Fascinating man. And unless he was pulling our leg, his parents, who were from the Allman-Bancroft area, had an ostrich farm. And he was telling us about how there was a process where you would turn the lights off in the barn. Otherwise, the ostrich would lose its mind. And then you would put a bag over its head. There's this whole routine. He could have made all this up. I don't think he did. But to answer your question, I would not farm llamas. I don't think I would want to farm any animals because then I would be responsible if these animals died and I'd have to deal with that. And I don't like the thought of that. So I know you asked for animals. I'm going to twist this. My dream is to have a cabin somewhere in Wisconsin. It could be up north. Although as I get older, I would like for it to be in the hills of the Cooley region somewhere, away from everyone. And I want to have a maple syrup farm. It doesn't have to be like this big industrial outfit, but I want like a cabin or a small house and then a little shed with a stove. And I could make 2 gallons. Like it's not an insane amount. I'm not selling this thing and distributing it at stores. I just love the process of collecting the sap, boiling it down. It's springtime, so the days are longer. The air has that smell, that earthy smell. So that's not an animal. If I had to farm any animals, ducks, runner ducks. I think they're a funny animal, and I like how they run, and they run in a line. I don't know what you do with them. I just think people have them. It's not like it's for meat or eggs or anything. They're just a funny animal. So if I had to have an animal, then I'd have to deal with it dying, which would bum me out. But runner ducks are kind of funny. I think that would be my answer. Maple syrup and runner ducks, if necessary. Great mailbag. We'll do it again in a week. Enjoy the national championship game tonight. I will be back tomorrow. We can discuss it all starting at 4. Talk to you then.